Tonight's presentation is focused on an overview of how do you finance a nonprofit. The focus group that we're looking at is either a grassroots nonprofit that's looking for funding or an existing nonprofit that's looking at how do you expand on increasing your revenue sources from funders. This workshop is entitled Where is the Money and How Do You Gain Access to It? One of the keys to operating an organization is having the necessary funding to cover operation. This video talks about how do you identify those funding to bring into your organization to increase at the very least operations. From looking at funders from around the country and what do they consider when they're looking at funding a nonprofit. What I've done is to identify key components that should be part of your grant proposal. That grant proposal should be plausible. That is, yeah, it's possible. It should be feasible. That is, but can you do it? It should be bankable in terms of can you finance it? It should be sustainable. Can you make it last? And finally, you should be able to market. It should be marketable. These are the key success elements to any proposal on writing a grant. So that being said, let's go ahead into the presentation that I prepared. And this presentation focused on where is the money and how do you gain access to it. That being said, I'm going to step back and let the video speak for itself. Randolph, and I'm with the Center for Nonprofit and Community Development. The workshop that we're about to talk about is entitled How to Finance a Nonprofit. This workshop is going to explore who are the funders that's funding nonprofit, which are the funders that you're more likely to get funded by, and other organizations and other information related to getting your nonprofit finance in order to do the good work that you do as a nonprofit. Our mission as a nonprofit is to strengthen organizations that strengthen communities. We provide an array of services that is specific and tailored to increasing organizational capacity. These services include anywhere from professional business plans, grant writing, program, and as you can see from this list, this is only a partial list of the services that we provide to nonprofits. So I've been doing this work for over 20 years. I'm coming out of Baltimore, Maryland. That's where I got most of my training from the experts on the ground there. I was first introduced into community building in the early 1980s, where I started as a community organizer. And from there, went to strategic planner, program developer, and designing comprehensive programs for solutions in urban distressed neighborhoods throughout the nation. So we started in 2011 We specifically focus on creating national and best practice approaches. To date, we've provided technical assistance to over 2,500, not 1,800 nonprofits throughout the United States. We have provided assistance in nonprofit getting started in 10 states, from California to Florida and all in between. In fact, this number has gone up. We actually have added 5 more states as part of the reach that we have. Okay, so give me a second while I try to transition to the next slide. So let's start off with what are the different types of grants that's out there that nonprofits can go for. The first type is called unrestricted grants. Funds may be used for general purposes for the organization. These types of unrestricted funds are far and few, but they're out there. Most grants are what we call restricted grants. And these types of restricted grants include monies for programs or project types of grants. This money is to support a specific program and usually with measurable outcomes. And then the next category is seed money. This is for new experimental or innovative projects or pilot projects and demonstration. Seed money is also good for new and upcoming nonprofits as a way to get money to hire that first person in your organization. And that first person should be a CEO. Seed money will go towards bringing that money so that CEO can be brought on board in order to bring in more money. The second type of grant or funding is called capital grants. Capital grants is when you want to go to buy a piece of land, real estate. If you want to build affordable houses, transitional housing, it's all related to land acquisition and doing types of projects like that in terms of capital grants. The next type is called an endowment, and I list this right here, although most nonprofits cannot access this type of grant. But these grants provide organizational future security. Endowment funds are invested to provide annual outcome, usually a percentage of earned income. That's why these are like colleges and institutions. When people and give money to those institutions, and they live off of the actual percent of funding that coming from that. And then you have, and this is one of the most important components, is what we call challenge grants or matching grants. Grants is made contingent upon a match being raised. Let's say, for example, you go to an organization for $100,000, and that organization will give you 80,000, but then you have to go and get the remaining 20,000. And then finally, what we have is in-kind support. And don't take this last category of grant-like funds lightly, because it can be used, especially if we're just getting started. In-kind support is any funding that's coming as a result of pro bono work or donated work. For example, volunteers that's working with your organization. Pro bono work can also be, for example, let's say if a lawyer decides to give free legal service to your organization, or if an accountant decides to give free legal accounting service to your organization. We have a whole workshop on in-kind support and how to get these different entities to volunteer to give that free service, be it a lawyer or an accountant. But that's called in-kind support. Most organizations look at in-kind support when people actually donate their time to your organization. This is not where they donate money, but their time to work and volunteer for your organization. And that's an equation that you can use in order to put this on the grant form to show that what you bring to the table in terms of people investing their time in your organization or vision. Okay, now let's talk about what are the different types of grantors. By this, we mean what are the different types of people that actually provide money to nonprofit? What are the different sources? Okay, now, and then we want to talk about what are the advantages and the disadvantages of in that particular respect. The advantages is going to be in this box, and the disadvantages is going to be in that box. So the first type of grantor of folks that give money is known as individuals, people that you know. This is the largest source of giving. Hopefully, it's ongoing sources that one can build. And once a giver, you also now have an advocate for your cause. A lot of people use individual funding now when they do GoFundMe or they use Cash App or one of those type of apps where people can actually give money electronically. Now, let's talk about what are the disadvantages. Well, first of all, it's hard to generate unless you have a broad-based service appeal. It's really risky for those that are inexperienced and little assistance from organizational boards. Now let's go to the next category, which is known as family and community foundation and religion organization. Family foundations are those foundations in which there is a biological connection between the organization and its family, like the Obama Foundation, the Clinton Foundation. All these foundations are family ran. That's what we mean by family foundation. And then what we have is what's known as community foundation. Community foundations are those foundations that give in a geographic area. For example, in Tampa, we have what's known as the Hillsborough County Children's Board. That means they will give money only in Hillsborough County. Or even in Baltimore, you might have an organization like the Baltimore Corporation. They might give only money or the Baltimore Foundation, and they will give money only for the particular geographic area that they represent. And then you have what's known as religious foundation. And these religions can be Christian, to Jewish organization, Muslim organization that give specifically to folks that are part of their religion. Now, let's talk about what are the advantages related to that. First, these entities are source of large sum of funds. They have clear guideline process, and they're most likely to research requests. They're most likely to research your requests. What are the disadvantages? Well, startup funds only and lengthy process. Most money is earmarked to specific funds, and it's hard to access those personal influence. And we're going to talk about how do we override these disadvantages to make sure that we're getting the fun of the funders a little bit long later on in the presentation. So this is Family and Community Foundation. I always suggest that if you are going for money, that you go for individual foundation money and then corporate foundation money, because they tend to be easier than when we get to the final category of government funds. That being said, let's go to the next category, and that's corporate foundation and individual and other foundations. Corporate foundation is foundations like Bank of America, Walmart, Walgreens, Shell, all these Pepsi, Coca-Cola, and that list go on and on and on. By law, corporate foundation must give up to 5%, if not 5% of their proceeds to charitable causes. So they definitely a source of funding for nonprofits. Then you have individuals and other type of foundation. Well, an individual can be someone that had lost a mother to cancer, and they decide to put that money in an individual foundation to fund any groups that are given to that are focused on giving assistance in preventing cancer. So let's look at what are the advantages. Well, again, source of large money, source of large money. Small amount of money may be ongoing. That means you might get an ongoing grant, 10,000 a year, etc., like that. The disadvantages: large sums of money ongoing and not likely to fund, if not headquartered locally, or hard to get around staff. That's why we're going to show you how to reduce this particular disadvantage. The other thing, and let me see if there's another category here because I got this object in front. Okay. The other thing is that corporate foundation, family foundation, community foundation, and individuals are the easiest source of going after funding. So let's move on. Then you have what's known as federated funds. That's like the United Way. They tend to be steady sources of large sums of money. This is a good source. And they have a clear process. However, in terms of disadvantages, they generally do not start, they generally do not find start. Let me read this. They generally do not find, I'm sorry, they generally do not find startup groups. And it's a very lengthy process. And then finally, and probably the hardest source of funding is coming from government sources, be it local, federal, state, county, etc. Now, they are a large source of funding. The process is clear, and political clouts help. What that mean? If you're going for a federal grant, you want to make sure that you got better support from your federal representative. You want to make sure you got support from your state representative, etc. when you're going after a government fund. Okay, now let's talk about the disadvantages. So some of the disadvantages is that the application procedure is long and tedious. The other is that you may only pay by units of services. And we're going to talk about that in one of our other in-depth classes. You can only be paid by unit of service. That's, for example, by the numbers. You could pay by, if you're helping 100 people, you get paid by 100 people. So it's by the units. The other thing is that it's difficult in record keeping. Let me tell you, going after state, federal, or government money can be very tedious. You always have to hire somebody to do the reporting and everything that's required of government money. However, that's why you want to make sure you write your grant. That person's salary when you're going after federal grants. Okay, so these are some of the sources of funders that's out there. Of course, the list is longer than this, but I just wanted to look at some of the major ones. Now, let's now talk about where do we go to find the money? How do we actually get access to finding the money in order to get funding for our nonprofit project? So now let's talk about where is the money? But before we do this, let me go back on the last topic that we talked about. So each of the funders that we talked about requires a different format in terms of going for that particular type of grant. For example, government grants known as one format, foundations another, corporations another, and on and on and on. So I just wanted to note that as you begin to look at which are the funders that we go for, then you identify what is the format that they require in terms of you filing that grant. Now, let's talk about where do you find the money. So let me share this with you, especially if you are a existing nonprofit,
This is a reminder.
or if you
Take my
are
vitamins. If
a
you finish this, just let me know you're
well-established
done.
nonprofit.
Otherwise, I'll remind you
So
in an hour.
what does that mean? I'm sorry, in
This
the
is a
background,
reminder.
I have
Take my vitamins. If you finish
Alexa
this,
reminding
just
me to
let me
take
know
my
you're done.
vitamins, so I
Otherwise,
apologize.
I'll remind you in an hour.
Okay, thank you, Alexa. Okay, let's continue on. So where do you get the money necessary for you to, in order for you
This is a
to
reminder.
fund your
Drink water.
organization's mission? Excuse me,
This is a reminder. Drink water.
I apologize. This is what happens when you do it live. So the following is a list of research tools you can use to find grants. First is what's known as the category of, of, of federal domestic assistance. You can go there. That's when you begin to look at, well, who are the people that's going to be bringing up funders? Who's asking for funding? This is at the early source when you're going for federal money. This is going to list like what committees is doing, what funding is coming out of the pipeline as well. The next source is known as the Federal Register, especially now these two items I'm talking about now, if you're going for federal money. You have the Federal Register. For example, there it might, for example, you might have the Department of Labor is putting a notice in the register that, hey, we're going to be issuing out a grant for A, B, C, and D. So that's the Federal Register on the federal level. Then the next one is probably one of the most one of the most likely sources of getting funding for nonprofits, and it's called the Foundation Center. So what am I saying about the Foundation Center and these other sites that we're going to be talking about? The Foundation Center has put out the numbers that there are over 160,000 funders that fund throughout the world for nonprofit. 160,000. Most of the time, when nonprofits are going for grants, I just want to stop for a second. I did say over 160,000 funders throughout the United States, and that's a conservative number. They are using Google and maybe people that know people, which is only about 3 or 4% of it. The Foundation Center offers an opportunity to get access to all of those funders, all 100 plus thousand of those funders, and able to actually do an inquiry. And the way you do it with the Foundation Center, you type in the subject, which is youth. Let's say you're doing that. You type in where you at. Let's say Tampa or Baltimore or whatever jurisdiction you in, and then you type in amount that you're interested in. Go the lowest amount that you're looking for. The lowest amount means that, hey, look, we want a grant for 100,000 or more. That means that when you get back that information, it's going to bring back all that information related to you, related to people that are funded in the area that you're talking about, and that are funding at the range and above that you're asking for. So again, this is a good source of researching for funding. But keep in mind that you have to understand the art of writing the grant. It's more than just finding where the money is. It's critical that you understand how to write the Pacific one for the Pacific Foundation. So that's a good source. I've used it a lot. And then you have grant selection. I don't use it that much, but I list that as another source of looking for and researching on where the money is and identifying those foundations and corporations. Then you have what's known as the federal business opportunities. This is on the federal level. You can get what are the opportunities in terms of grants that's coming up, but all kind of opportunities related to federal government and business opportunities. And then grant.gov is where you want to go if you want to know about any federal grants that's on a federal level. You definitely want to register with this site because what's going on now is that the federal government is requiring that if you're going to go for a grant with them, they're moving away from paper grants where you mail it in, hard copies, to doing it electronically. And grant.gov is becoming a force that deals with that. And when you're going for federal government grants, you're going to have to apply for it on grant.gov. Also, when you're going for federal grants, there's other types of requirements. For example, you have to register with SAM, which is a which is a government agency that deals with federal business. So you have to register with SAMS as well as with grants.gov if you're going to be going after federal money. That's probably true also on the local level or on the state level for those agencies. And then finally, you have what's known as Grant Station. I can say right now, I use Grant Station a lot. I like Grant Station because it offers all kind of other benefits from not only searching for grants, but also it breaks down how to write a grant, strategies that you should use, objective, goals. It gives you the framework in order to write that particular grant. We use all these formats, be it the Foundation Center, Grant Station, and our grant classes. And we try to bring a unique experience in our grant class that looks at all of the best practices and bring them into one experience with us in terms of we looking at how to actually teach not only how to search for grants, but how to write for grants as well. So I hope this was not that long, but I think that this can really take you to the next level when you begin to think about, are we going for grants? And if we're going for grants, where are the grants? And after finding out where the grants are, we find out who's giving the grants and how to search for it.